So, Seamus Breslin here, friends of Derry City Cemetery. If you want any tours of City Cemetery, give us a call. Any historical research or tours of the bog site, the walls, or anywhere. Friends of Derry City Cemetery, by myself, takes a tour. Might be Gavin Patton films. Any community groups, any families want films made. Weddings, Gavin's your man. Look how popular the films are on YouTube, TikTok, etc. So today, we're here out making this film today, and we're going back to 1923. Now let me put it in the context for you, 1923. Ireland has just been partitioned. We've just had the most terrible civil war ever in the history of this city. 1920, there was 40 killed in the 1 year, 20 in the 1 week, June 1920. Bodies were lying around here at the fountain, the bog side. Edwin Price was killed just over here. And there was a few people killed here at Bridge Street, Fountain Interface, a man called Doherty down outside St Column's Hall, and bodies and blood. It was just after the First World Wars. There was a lot of carnage, a lot of people carrying wounds, a lot of widows about, and then we had the Irish Civil War, and then we had the city being partitioned. So people were used to lots of blood and lots of death, lots of destruction, lots of tragedy. But most of it was from a political aspect. And right in the midst of it then in 1923 came a huge sensation. Deaths that weren't associated with politics and that had the good old-fashioned of combination of romance, of infidelity, of accusations, counter-accusations, marital rows, and then poisoning. And what happened was, it happened here in Pump Street, number 17, so that's number 5 there. And on number 17 Pump Street, there was 2 bodies found. One was just about to perspire, and that was Mrs. Mabel Thorp, and her husband was already dead, Dr. Charl Thorp. Dr. Charl Thorp was born in Australia. He emigrated to America. He qualified, specialising in back pain and that, and he became known in Derry as the back doctor. And he set up practice on Charlie Road. So, back in the day, Dr. Charl Thorp had his practice for fixing your back, and it was hard labour in them days, so I'm sure he was pretty popular, and he had a good clientele, good business, and he was nice and handy to his place of work in Carlisle Road. So they took lodgings out here on number 17 Pump Street, which was the home of Mrs. Meehan. And they rented out a room, and they had a housekeeper that brought them their breakfast, and they had a fire in their room, and it was pretty comfortable way of life, because Pump Street was the des res at the time. Now, people are saying, there's local rumour, that Dr. Thorp was a bit of a philanderer, that he was fond of the women, and being a doctor and that, and he says that he walked around with a big wide brimmed hat and a white scarf and a long black coat, and probably stick in that. And the ladies liked him, and he liked the ladies. Now, some people are saying, because there's always different versions of stories, that they had a happy marriage. And Mrs. Meehan, the housekeeper, says that they used to have rows and that, but it was nothing more than your normal lovers' quarrel. And they said they usually made up, and they were always more intimate and more friendly after the make-up. Breaking up's hard, making up's the positive side of it. But prior to them being found on here with a poison, Mrs. Thorp had taken herself off and taken herself up to Ballycastle. And it seemed she wasn't well, and she stayed in Ballycastle. And he thought she went to Belfast, and he went up to Belfast looking for her. but he didn't find her. And on returning down here, he discovered that she wasn't in Belfast, but she was in Ballycastle. And so he went to Ballycastle, and she didn't come home with him. And he came home on his own, and then he wrote a letter. This letter was produced at the inquest, and the letter stated it was very, very hostile to him, and saying that he was going to kill her, and that she wouldn't be living long. And I mean this, and I'm serious about this, and this is a truthful. And he signed the letter then, Mr. Hatred, or full of hatred and that. And it was weeks after that then, that in here, in their apartment up here, he was found lifeless, dead. She was on the brink of death, and there was potassium cyanide, which was used in developing photographs. And he had purchased it down in a chemist in Strand Road just that day. So what they were saying was this was a lover's suicide pact, that this couple decided not to be living anymore and they died together. And some of the newspapers said that they died in each other's arms. But the truth of it, sort of, you have to go with the inquest. And at the inquest, Mrs. Meehan, who was the housekeeper, said that they had quarrels and they made up. The woman, Mrs. Goodwin, who was the housekeeper, said she had went that day and knocked on the door, never got an answer. She went to take them their breakfast, never got an answer. She went then to light the fire and put more coals, never got an answer. Then they heard moaning from the room, and the police came and probably here at the front window. They entered the room via a ladder, and the press says they met this horrific scene of the two of them on clothes, on their night attire, lying in bed. Mrs. Mabel Thorp dead, him on the throes of death. So huge crowds gathered, because we didn't have the internet then, and radio and television and that, and word spread like wildfire, and crowds gathered. And anyway, the bodies were removed and taken. Doctors were called. The doctors says that they couldn't do anything for him, and he perspired shortly after. But then at the inquest it came out, and Mrs. Meehan and Mrs. Goodwin, the housekeeper, were saying that they were in friendly terms and they had made up and that, and this was taken at face value as being they were on good terms. But the letter was produced, and this letter was really vile towards Mrs. Thorp from her husband, doctor, and people were saying, "Mere, this does not make your own mind up." Like, the words he was using was really, really narcissistic. It was terrible, some of the things he was saying and calling her and that, and signing it, what he signed it with a horrible name and that. But the inquest decreed that it was a lover's pact suicide, and the two of them were waked and to be buried together. So at the funeral, as the funeral was leaving here, the local press reported that it was thronged, packed, mostly with women, some of whom fainted, and you could hear their moans and weeps when the bodies and the coffins were brought out of these supposedly, or probably, we don't know, lovers that had died together. There was £120 found in the safe. The police took control of that. So they had a normal funeral up to the city cemetery, and the inquest then concluded an open verdict or whatever, suicide pact. But in the times then, when travel wasn't as easy as what it is today and that, the family in America of Mabel Thorp were convinced that she had murdered him. And evidence for that came from Dr. Thorp's driver or chauffeur, who said that Dr. Thorp had sent a message to him saying, "Be here at 3 o'clock on that day for me to collect me. Don't be a minute late, be there." And he said he didn't get the message, so he didn't come to much later, and by that time he was dead. But they were suggesting that the reason he told the driver to be there at exactly that time is that he would be discovered and he could get the antidote and live whilst the wife died. So that was an accusation. And the family were convinced of that in America, and on the time they got here, they says, "We're taking the body home," and they reinterred, because they did not want her living or at rest in the same soil as what they believed was the husband that murdered him. This was a huge sensation. I mean, it made the national newspapers. And I suppose because they were sort of like American couple in Derry, born in Australia, suicides, murder. It had the lot, all the gory details of a murder, a scandal that you would associate probably with London. So this was the year 1923. So if we go to the cemetery, we'll visit the plot, because there was further accusations up there about things that went on around the burial plot. This here, from 1920, whenever the Troubles was here and the people were getting killed, there was bodies lying everywhere. Down here was Bridge Street, which was a staunchly nationalist area, and up here was the fountain. So this was the front line at the time, 1920, of shooting and killing. And even in 1913, there was a man killed during the election, the 1913 election, down here. But here, well, a lot of people don't even know about it, but the graffiti is still here from 1920. So the military, the British Army, would have had a barricade here, obviously keeping them out of sight from the snipers, but protecting the fountain. And here, look, RGA is the Royal Garrison Artillery, the Dorset Regiment. Doyle will be got, Bridge Street, F the Pope, and some of the names, S. Smith. So the soldiers, as in most generations, in 1920, when the death was all around us here, and tragedy, were here. It's carving their names in the wall, and it's still here. Up the RGA, Royal Garrison Artillery. The names of the soldiers. And down here there's about guys naming guys from the Bridge Street that were going to be got. Something here about Mannix, the bishop was coming from Australia all of the day. And that's the soldiers with their bonnets would have been carving their name here in 1920. And death and the tragedy was all around here, just round the corner from Pump Street, where we had our normal, run-of-the-mill societal murder, suicide pact, or whatever. Just make your own mind up time. We can just give you the evidence. So here we are at the final resting place of Dr. Thorp. Died, Inquest didn't officially, legally, that it was a suicide pact. Died in the arms of his wife. The other side of the story is that it was murder. That he was a serial womanizer, and that the two of them couldn't look at one another. That he had threatened to kill her in a letter. And that they were rowing all the time, and he had arranged it for him to be discovered and not to die while the wife died. But I missed timing. The chauffeur that was supposed to turn up and find him didn't turn up, didn't get the message, and so the two of them died. And by the time the family got from America here for his wife, Mabel, they were convinced that he had murdered her. And they weren't having none of it, of him and her being at rest together, the two lovers that died. And they wanted the body exhumed, and they got it exhumed, and they took it home to America and buried her back with her family in America. Now, there is evidence now that has emerged that people were saying that around here was haunted since he was buried. And there was an evil spirit here. And that what they actually had to do is they had to get a minister to come here and perform an exorcism to drive the spirit out that was haunting here. But with no evidence for it, and as usual, it's just speculation. But I call it the Hugh Green moment. Make your own mind up, folks. What do you think? Was it a lover's pact? Died in each other's arms, made up? Or did he murder her? Was he supposed to get discovered and live a long life? I mean, we're split on it. But my money goes on. He killed her and was expected to live. And I've been reading every bit of information there is about it. But it's up to yourself. If you want to find out more about the story, join our Friends of Derry City Cemetery on Facebook. And thank you for watching this wee kiss. And thanks to Gavin Patton Films and Friends of Derry City Cemetery. If you want any tours, give Friends of Derry City a call. If you want any films made, give Gavin a call. Thank you.